Hello and welcome to the I Am Woman project, where every week we have deep, thought-provoking and interesting conversations with thought leaders, change instigators, rule breakers and creative minds who think differently, sparking creativity and inspiration. Our special guests on our show cover a variety of topics just for you, and they share their personal stories to inspire, motivate and empower you, our listener. The I Am Woman podcast is produced for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at www.catherineplano.com. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favourite RSS feed or iTunes. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get into the show. Today we have Katia Loisel, who is a relationship and body language expert. She is also the host of French Kiss, the art and science of kissing. Katia is also the founder of The Love Destination, which is a multi-platform global digital TV and media network dedicated to everything to do with love, dating and relationships. The Love Destination is a social impact business with a global mission to conquer loneliness and disconnection, inspiring and empowering women through everything love. It is dedicated to improving the lives of women and supporting aligned charities worldwide. A little quote for you by Lao Tzu. Being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. Be in love with your life and every minute of it. Enjoy the Love Destination interview. So welcome. Today we have Katia Loisel. How are you today?
Hello. I'm so excited to be speaking to you. I am fantastic.
We know you're not fantastic, sweetheart. You're always fantastic.
As are you, I'm sure. Come on. I'm sure you're having a great day too, aren't we?
Always. And for our listeners, I was just making sure that I pronounce this beautiful name, Loisel. So it's obviously a French background.
French, yes. You know, I migrated to Australia. I was 5.5 when my mum, my dad and my little brother, we came over here from France. So we couldn't speak a word of English. We've got some very funny stories about that, I can promise you.
Yes.
For another time. But, it's everybody's got an amazing journey, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm the same. I came to Australia when I was 7, and I have some exciting stories about my time here. One famous one is that I think of every time is my mother, and it was big in France in those days in the 70s, but she used to dress my sister and I like twins, and I mean, it looked really cute. When we look at it now, we just think, oh, that is so cool. But we used to get teased all the time.
Oh, isn't that funny? And I remember when it was Halloween, actually it wasn't our first Halloween. I must have been 7, and my parents were invited to a Halloween party. We didn't know what that was, of course, and my parents couldn't speak English at all. My dad a little bit, but my mum nothing. And so they said, bring a plate. And so we went along to this, it said dress up. So we went along to a Halloween party. My brother was dressed as a girl. I was dressed in a Polish communion costume, and my parents bought an empty plate, literally, because they didn't know. And of course, my brother, he was, Mr. Extrovert. He loved all the attention lavished on him with his beautiful little spiral blonde hair, dressed as a girl, whereas I was hiding. Everyone else were, ghosts, and I was there in my ridiculous outfit, hiding in the corner, wishing I was with that empty plate with no food.
Aww.
So anyway, it's all part of the fun. It makes a great story now, and every time I think about it, I still cringe, but it still makes me laugh.
At least you can laugh at it now. I think that's gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, we all have those stories, don't we?
Absolutely.
Parents embarrassing us.
Yeah, of course. And I'm sure our children, as they get older, they'll be saying the same stories about us.
Exactly. And it's perfect in time for Mother's Day, right? To talk about these funny experiences that we had with our mums and, and times when at the time when we were really mortified, right? I think this is the same. For me, this is really interesting because it's whether it's parenting or whether it's business, we have these times, and I'm sure you'll relate to this, and you ladies out there, where it feels like the world is crashing down. It's mortifying, worst case scenario. Oh my goodness, you know. But then when we look back at it, they're these amazing memories, these turning points in our life, right?
Absolutely.
And what seemed like, whoa, were actually, you know, that's what I look back on, and that's what makes me smile. So.
Yes, so true, so true. So, Katia, for our listeners, let's unpack Katia and tell us what you do.
Does everybody just go quiet when you ask them that question? You're like, oh, so what do you what I do now, or my story? Or
So let's hear your story. Tell us your story.
Start at the very beginning. Well, you know what? I'm a big believer that every great story is a love story of some kind. You know, obviously there are different kinds of love, including learning to love yourself, right? And so for me, that's no different. You know, the reason I do what I do now, and I guess my driving force and my inspiration, and it's been a very long, windy road, and there have been plenty of times when I've been like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? You know, get me out of here, beam me up. You know, I've always been like most people, right? I've always, you know, when we're relational beings, we're here to connect with one another. But I had a lot of issues doing that as a child. You know, I really struggled. I was the person lining up in the canteen line or hiding in the toilets because I didn't really want to talk to anybody. And not because I didn't want to connect, but because I had that, you know, ingrained deep belief that nobody wanted to talk to me, that I wasn't worthy. And, it really just, you know, to be honest, I probably wasn't a very pleasant person. And I remember, you know, and that's, you know, for anyone, and I know that a lot of people have been through this, and, you know, it's that deep pain, you know, of actually not being able to connect with people, of feeling on the outside is just, you know, for me, that was really unbearable. But you know, I never saw my part in that ever. You know, I always thought that you know, I thought that there was something intrinsically wrong with me, number one, but I also thought that, you know, there was something wrong with other people, and why are they treating me like this? I just couldn't understand it. And it wasn't until my early 20s, and somebody actually said to me, you come across as being a bitch and aloof, you know, you're a real snob. And you know what, I don't know if anyone out there has ever had that experience of somebody saying something to you that was completely incongruent with how you see yourself, you know what I mean? But for me, it was like, firstly, you know, I've got to admit, I felt pretty angry, and I just was in disbelief and like, what the hell? And mortified, you know, and this, like, I just 1,000 things swirling in my head thinking, and even now when I talk about it, you know, it just brings this sense of deep, not a regret, but it was just like realization, I guess, you know, because it was the first time that anyone had ever said something like that to me, you know, and I was the type of person that would walk around and, you know, avoid eye contact. You know, I was very closed off, and I, like many people, didn't actually realize how that affected my relationships, and didn't understand how my view of myself and my beliefs and my lack of self-worth actually affected all of my relationships and my life. You know, I mean, I was bulimic for 9 years. I hated myself. You know, I had this really deep sense of self-loathing. And, you know, for me, it was about controlling everything. You know, I couldn't, even now, you know, to be honest, you know, and I've spoken to a lot of women about this, and even now looking in the mirror, I mean, that was a long time ago, you know, 20 years ago. But even now, sometimes I still struggle, and I look at myself and I think, am I fat or am I skinny? I don't know, you know. There's still that bit of me that has to keep reminding myself every day, you're okay, you're beautiful, you're okay, you know. And so that was a real turning point. You know, I'm digressing all over the place, aren't I?
No, not at all. I'm relating to everything you're saying, so I'm listening to you.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because these points in our life, they, you know, and how we feel about ourselves affects every single part of our life. And really, it wasn't until that moment that I actually realized that, you know, I never understood the fact, you know, my eating disorder, I didn't really understand on a deep level that was actually a cry for help and a lack of self-love. and me actually not being able to accept myself as I was, needing to change. But no matter what I was like, it wasn't right. It wasn't good enough, So that was a turning point in my life, and I changed everything. I was engaged at the time. I broke up with my partner. I started really studying, at the time, there wasn't that much out on, body language and nonverbal communication and relationships. It's not like now where you can go on the internet or, get hundreds of books. And so I really just started reading all the research, everything that there was to know about this, and actually changing my life. And, I remember walking down the street and I would look people, because I couldn't quite bring myself to look people in the eye, because God, that's confronting, isn't it, when you're not used to it? Yeah. So I used to just look at people in their forehead and, and force myself, and it's actually a good trick if you're out there and you're finding it hard, is just to do that, because eventually what happens is you'll smile, even though you're looking not really at their eyes, but, above their eyebrows, and they'll smile back. And what happens is it's like this dual feedback mechanism, right? They smile at you, and then that makes you feel good, and you smile, and then the next person smiles back at you, and all of a sudden it's like this loop that you start. The more you do it, the more you get. It's this amazing thing, when what you give out, you get, and that's so true, and it's true of this. And I remember walking down the street, and I was living in South Yarra, and I was smiling like a crazy person at this guy in a suit, feeling like I was dying inside, honestly. But he smiled back at me, and I just remember going, and it was beautiful. And it was just like, oh, wow, and so that changed a lot for me, and it really made me realize the power of connection, connecting to yourself and understanding yourself and connecting to other people. That's just, there is so much magic and so much power in that, and such it's an amazing gift to give to yourself and also to other people, but it can literally change not only your life but everyone else's. And it certainly changed mine. I went, my background, I then was working with actors and, had an acting agency and, working as an actor, completely different to before, and working with nonverbal, communication with actors, and then started working on relationships and, ran speed dating events, around the country and workshops. And I mean, this was a long time ago, but because my background then was in the media, I started doing lots of, media interviews and TV. And it was really interesting because it's funny, I sort of left and thought, oh my goodness, I don't really want to work in TV anymore. But it's funny how sometimes what you really fear is sometimes what you really love. Do you know, have you ever felt that? Like sometimes we're drawn, but we kind of have this love-hate relationship with
Absolutely.
what And so I love the connection of working with people, probably as you do, right? Because it's an amazing thing to be able to connect with a big audience. But by the same token, that scared me on a lot of levels. Like, what will people think of me? Will they think that I'm ridiculous? Am I good enough to do this? Am I a fraud? All these things that come up. And so I stopped doing it and was working with, singles and couples, and working sort of at that time, the flirting, connecting, body language sort of space. And it was really interesting. Now, this is a very long story, so I'm really sorry.
No,
but,
keep going.
So I was working doing this, and I wrote a book, and this was back in 2009. And I'd been working with, obviously TV networks and working on a lot of morning shows and that sort of thing. And I wrote a book, and I was doing a media campaign for it. And I created this little, really very low production quality online series. And lo and behold, we ended up getting like 12 million views from this little thing that was really quite bad. I was 6.5 months pregnant at the time, and I remember reading people's comments, which you should never do, by the way. What is wrong with you? Why are your boobs so big? Why are you so fat? I was like, oh my God. That should have been enough to put me off, but thankfully it wasn't. But it really made me realize, I guess, the power of, one, overcoming, not letting your fear, and overcoming your fear, and not letting your fear get in the way of your message.
Yep.
Because for me, I realized that this is actually an amazing vehicle. TV, that's what I love. That's, when I'm in that space, for me, it's like being in love or in my zone in nirvana. You know, for me, it's like the best part of myself. But not letting your fear get in the way, because my fear of me not being good enough in that role or putting myself out publicly actually was getting in the way of a vehicle, which, you know, so for the ladies out there, you know, looking to do videos and stuff, it's an amazing vehicle to connect with and engage with your audience, right? It's an amazing way, like what you're doing now, an amazing way to connect with people on a really quite deep level, that you would never cross paths with, you know? And it really, so I guess for me it was accepting that this is what I need to do and this is what I'm supposed to do. And if I'm going to do that, that I've got to get over myself, you know, and I've got to get out of my own way. And you know what, it was sort of back then, and that I had made the decision that I wanted to do digital TV, but with the purpose and my intention of inspiring and empowering women. For me, you know, I guess my mission, my global mission is to conquer disconnection and loneliness and inspire and empower women through everything love, you know, and that's our global mission at the Love Destination. That's my mission, because the truth is most of us are lonely. Most of us feel disconnected. You know, they did an amazing study in the UK, Catherine, and this blew my mind, that over 70% of adults said that they were lonely sometimes, always, or often. And for the 18 to 34-year-olds, it was 83%.
Oh, wow.
The Facebook generation, right? Like, and I just thought to myself, what? And this is the thing, is we're more connected than ever, but low self-esteem, you know, over 90% of women hate their bodies, you know, and I stick you know, I mean, no matter how much work I, you know, do on myself, it's still honestly a battle for me, if I'm honest, to say I love my body. I can say it, but do I really mean it? No, I don't. I'm working on it, and it's a journey for me, you know. Yep. And it might be a damn well lifelong journey. But you know, this is the thing, and a lot of people, even in their relationships, are disconnected, not only disconnected from their partner, but disconnected from themselves and who they are and what they really want, and unable to speak their truth, unable to say, this is what I really need for me. This is what I need from you. This is what my little person inside of me is crying out for, unable to communicate it honestly, or even at work, unable to say that. And I know that's really difficult, because I find it really difficult. You know, I'm not one myself for having challenging conversations. I don't like conflict very much, and I'd rather hide a lot of the time. So I know how hard that is. But I think for me, and I guess the reason why I thought, and, you know, I've had so many setbacks, it's just not even funny, you know, to the point where sometimes, you know, I've had people, and even my parents' friends, say to me, why is she doing that? You know, she's a single parent, which I am now. She should just stop, you know.
As in stop doing Love Destination?
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe talk to us about that, because I think that for our listeners that don't know what Love Destination is and how you bring women together, and maybe talk us through a little bit about that too.
Yes, well, that's it, because I've gone on a rant, haven't I? And I haven't even said what I did. So the Love Destination, so basically this is my fourth attempt. You know, my idea was to, you know, back in 2012, I started my first version, and the idea was to have a free, you know, so obviously with different parts to it, but an online, so basically an online or a digital TV network, if you like, or at the time, the first version wasn't that big. It just had a few shows. That basically has content created by women for women. So content around love, self-love, dating, relationships. The truth is, I guess my thing is, you know, having worked in TV and media and relationships and for so long, is that a lot of the content that's created is created by men for women, but it doesn't make us feel good about ourselves. If you have a look on TV at TV at the moment, you know, what every relationship show, Married at First Sight, Kiss Bang Love, you know, they're all the same. It's all about instant gratification, instant attraction. You know, that's not love. This true. Isn't, or, you know, about that we have to make it's all about this external in order to connect with people, you know, but this is not love. This is not what love and connection is all about. And so for me, I think And the truth is, research shows that most women, and I myself, don't actually relate to the people they're seeing on screen, right? It's like, who is this person? That's not me. I'm never going to look like this. I don't have that life. And for me, I guess the big thing is for us to have honest conversations. So the Love Destination is a social impact business. So we will be working with aligned charities to inspire and empower women, as well as doing, social outreach programs. And we have a global, Love Ambassador program, because I think that each and every one of us has the ability to create change in the world, right, and in our communities. But often we feel as though we're powerless to do so. But we're not actually. We all have the ability to instill hope and love in other people as well as ourselves. And so for us, it's really about creating inspiring and empowering content, we've only launched stage 1. So at the moment, I'm going to the US at the end of this month in 2 weeks, and we're filming in New York and LA. And it's kind of been this big jump and a big change sort of in the company, and for me, it's taken such a long time that sometimes, for the women in business out there, as sometimes you think, I don't know whether this is going to work or not,
How exciting.
It is. It's really exciting. But I guess for me, it's, sometimes you just have to follow your heart. And I think if your intention's right and you know why you're doing something, then sometimes you have to just keep going despite everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And Katia, you said it's your 4th attempt. So, and some of our listeners, a lot of our listeners are actually women in business. And
yes.
So what would be some of the lessons learned along the way?
I think the big thing is, a lot of, just because sometimes we get into, and I think this is the biggest learning curve for me, is sometimes we get into business with people, into relationships, and not just in business, relationships, or into situations because we feel as though we're not worthy, because we feel as though on our own we can't do it. And we don't always make the right decisions because we don't trust our gut. So number one, if your gut says something to you, regardless of how much you think this is such an amazing opportunity, if your gut is screaming no, or even gently whispering, Catherine, no, then don't do it. And this was a big thing for me because I really doubted my ability to do something on my own. You know what I mean? I felt like I needed to do something with other people. And that, and sometimes you make the wrong decisions because of that as well. The second thing is people will tell you to stop, and failure is an important part of business, I think. You learn from your mistakes, and, sometimes it doesn't mean that the idea is flawed. Sometimes it means you just have to change things or tweak things a little bit, or get feedback, or change a direction. Or sometimes it's because what you're doing isn't quite aligned with the right intention at the time. And, sometimes we've got an idea and we have an intention, but then we go off the road a little bit because this looks like a better financial model, and we kind of can forget about why we started it in the first place. And in my opinion, it's just my opinion, if you do that, eventually things start to fall down, and I've had that experience, and then had to recalibrate and think, actually, no, what is it? Why am I doing this? And it has to come from that first, So for me, everything has to be about love and with love first, full stop, It's got to come from that, regardless of the other thing, even if something sounds like a great plan, if it doesn't fit into that, then just can't do it, So I think that's it. And then not to give up. I was watching, I can't remember his name now, but his name is Gary, and he does, those inspiring YouTube videos, and he's got that Facebook group about, and he's got millions and millions of followers. But basically, I was watching his video this morning, and I loved what he said, is that the big thing, and I think it's so true, the big thing that we're missing as business people and business women is patience, because we think that it's just because we love our idea that it's going to happen quickly. And, I've been working full time on this idea since the beginning of 2014, and I haven't had a paid job since then, apart from doing brand spokesperson things every now and again. And that's a really long time. I'm a single parent. I separated from my ex-husband in 2012, and I have the kids most of the time. And so juggling that has been a nightmare.
How do you do it?
Not very well, honestly. And I think that's something that a lot of mums will face, right? Whether you're a single parent or whether you're a parent, full stop, is often, I mean, if I can speak from, I often feel like a complete failure, to be honest. And I often feel as though I'm doing both jobs badly. But I think for me, it's just giving myself a break, actually, and even communicating to the kids that I'm actually doing the best that I can. And having to remind myself about that all the time, because for me, it's a compromise. And often I'm working until 2 a.m. and then I get up at 6 because now we've just appointed new executive directors and global marketing development team, and they're based in Canada and LA. So for me, that's an amazing thing. But also it means that I have to do Skype calls, at 6 a.m. Yes. But I'm going to bed at 2. And also, you know that that's bad for you. And, we at the Love Destination, we're all about self-love. And here I am. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how do you juggle this? I don't know. You tell me. I'm still not at the point of having a good balance. And I don't know if there is such a thing as a good balance. I don't know. Is there? You tell me.
Well, I don't.
How do you do it?
I say love. I always say, love. Listen to me. I'm speaking about love. I always used to look for work-life balance, but now it's work-life integration. I don't believe there is. I think that I got more stressed out trying to separate the two. But the moment that I went, they're all one. They're part of my life.
Yes.
I'm doing what I love. It was so much more easier to work through. So I just call it an integration. There is no such thing as balance. Yes. You have to integrate it, and how do you integrate it into your life?
Yeah, you know what? And I love that you say that, because I think one of the interesting things at the beginning when I started this business, I work from home, and for me that's great because firstly I can't afford to rent anywhere, I can't afford an office, and I'd rather pay my staff with that money. And secondly, it means that, if the kids are sick or whatever, it's just easier. But also, at the beginning, I would pretend, right? Like I'd pretend, make us sound out to be this much bigger than we were, because I thought, well, the power of perception. But then at the end, it's actually exhausting doing that. Keeping up this whole pretense, I found it just exhausting. So then I just thought, I'm just going to be honest and say, I work from home. If the kids are screaming in the background, sorry about that. When I do my media interviews now, I'm sort of like, you might hear, because sometimes my daughter, I do media interviews at 6:30 in the morning, and I'm in bed in my pajamas, Angelique sleeping in bed next to me, and I'm like, I'm sorry if she wakes up, or, I've got her laying next to me.
But that's good. That's gorgeous. And I think, that's part of integration as well, There's so many women that do that. Like I remember when we did, I was part of Wide for Wonder, and they one of the ladies that organises it, Sarah, she had her little baby up on stage, and I think it's about integrating what is your life, because it makes it so much easier for you and the child, or for you when you're standing in your truth and you're not trying to be something else when you're not. You're actually a mother. I think people understand that too, and they embrace it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's, this is a big thing, I think, for women, is I really feel that it's just time for us to cut the crap and just be a bit more honest. There's so much power in supporting one another and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, rather than actually a lot of women, and we've been brought up this way, haven't we? We see each other as competition rather than inspiration. And that's why I love this program that you're doing, because women are inspiring. To hear other women's stories, it can really help us. It can help us get through those hard spots.
Absolutely.
And actually, the women in my life, and also, the men around me who wouldn't be sitting where we're now, and now going, about to launch in a few months, a global digital TV and media network, on Everything Love, if it weren't for the people around me. Because honestly, there were many times where I was sitting at home and I thought, I don't even want to go to investors because I'm too scared. And they were like, we will literally come here, we will help you write the deck. And they did. And, and they supported me, and they they said, I felt like that too, you know, when I thought, I feel like a fraud, I feel like I need to give up, I don't know if I can do it. It's the people around you. When you are honest and you tell, you know, people can't relate to you and your story. People can't help you. People can't support you unless you're vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Unless you open up and you say, this is hard, I'm struggling, I need advice, rather than pretending we put on this shiny exterior and pretend as though we have everything happening and we've got it all going on, but we don't. And so why pretend?
So
you know,
true.
why not just say, how can I help you? And, you know, can you help me? I'd love your advice. Oh my God, I'm struggling today, you know, because being in business and is, for me anyway, and I've found that a lot of people I've spoken to, you know, it can be really isolating. It can be confusing. It can feel really lonely. It's particularly, you know, if for the extroverts out there, you know, working by yourself can be, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm dying, you know, so I need to call my support network and say, hey, can we catch up and talk? Because they're like a lifeline, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't believe in competition. I believe in collaboration because we're all unique. We're all individual, and it's how do we work together?
Absolutely.
I do have to ask you because, I mean, I love the fact you've been standing your truth and being so vulnerable because there's a lot of strength in vulnerability, and I think that's the new way moving forward is about vulnerability. And you see that a lot more in a lot of the women and a lot of leaders today. They really are standing in and expressing exactly what they're feeling and how they're feeling and being vulnerable. And all it does, it opens up the space for others to stand in their truth and be vulnerable as well, which I just love. I just love.
It's so powerful, isn't it? And and it's great for women to know, and men, but for women to know that, and for us to show our children as well, that there is strength in vulnerability, you know, and it is okay to be vulnerable. Not just okay, it is good to be vulnerable, because it's in being vulnerable that we truly can connect on an intimate level with people. And what could be more beautiful, right? Than, you know, I mean, when one feels really understood, and, you know, that's when we can really express ourselves and really connect on a much deeper level. So I think that's just so beautiful.
It is. Listen to you, Katia. So, Katia, every business has pain points. What would be one of your biggest pain points in your business?
Oh, you know, I think, how do you want a list? No. There's so many, you know, lack of time. You know, lack of time is a really, really big one. And, you know, and I'm sure that you can relate to this, and most of the business women listening to this will relate to this. It's almost, if I could clone 10 of me, my life would be much easier. But it's just, you particularly when it's your business and you end up, you sort of have your hand in all the pies. You're the bookkeeper, you've got to approve everything. And it's particularly when you want to make sure that, you know, it's done with the same intention. And it's just a lot of pressure. And I think that pressure it's almost like walking a tightrope sometimes, I feel. You know, it can be really, a certain amount of pressure can really help you grow, but when it gets too much, particularly with kids, or you have the added pressure of kids wanting stuff now, please, now, what are you doing? Why are you working? For me, that's always a very fine balance, and that's my big one. That, and, you know, resources, like financial resources, it's always a struggle, you know.
So obviously, there's two pain points. So the pain point I heard was time and financials. So
time and money.
Money. So how do you work through those? Because all of us have those moments where time is of essence and we don't have enough time, and we've got deadlines to meet, and you've got your people that are working with you saying, hey, this has got to be done last week. But like you said, you're the salesperson, marketing person, bookkeeper, you're everything. So how do you work through that? Like, how do you actually, what's your solution for time and for money?
Well, this is the thing, is I have to admit to not being particularly organised, but one thing that saves me is lists. So I literally have every day, like I have my weekly list and I have my daily list, and I prioritise, because otherwise, and there always ends up being 5 or 6 things on that list that end up having to go to the next day, but it certainly helps. because I can procrastinate. When I get into overwhelm, I procrastinate and I'll just stare at the wall and do nothing. So that's a big thing for me. And so I know that I need to manage that. And that's another thing, is just managing your stress levels. So even if it's just sitting and just closing my eyes for a minute and just, I say to myself, thank you for my constant sources of love and connection and income. And I try and give myself these little affirmations when I'm feeling like, oh my God, I've got no money left. So I just, but it actually does work. For me, it helps to relieve my stress and just get me sort of centered back into my body so that I'm not flipping out. Because when I'm like that, I actually just can't function.
Yeah, of
and
course.
then I procrastinate. And I guess another thing which has been really difficult for me is two things. I'm normally a yes person. I say yes to everything. And it's only been in the last year and a half that I had to start saying no to things. And it's really difficult, and I find it really painful to do that. I don't like to disappoint people. I'd rather disappoint myself than others, which is a crazy thing. But that's helped me a lot, and it's been very hard to do. And sometimes I've literally sat looking at emails for a day before I could write back and say, sorry, I can't do this, because my initial reaction is yes, for sure. But I've had to. So if you're a yes person, then actually giving yourself a day or 2 days before you actually reply. And sometimes it's meant I haven't replied to people for a week just because I really can't say yes, but I'm going to. So I just haven't replied, which is terrible, bad for relationships. But rather than saying yes when I really don't want to, if I can't say no, I just wait. But I'm working through, this is part of my journey. I've been like this for my whole life. And so it's a big one for me to stop myself from doing that. And the other thing is delegating. I'm also the type of person that is self-admittedly maybe a bit of a control freak and takes on everything, and allowing people to do what they're good at rather than taking over. And that's hard to let go of that, but I think it's really important.
I've become an expert at delegating. I love delegating.
I need your tips.
No, and purely because there is one of me. There's so much going on. I have an amazing team, and I just trust they know what they're doing, and they just go for it. And I think that by doing that too, you empower people when you allow them to obviously you've got them working with you because of their areas in whatever expertise that is. And so I just let them run with it, and then we can then collaborate. But for me, there's no way I could do it all myself, because there's just not enough time, and there's only one of me. It'd be impossible. So, Katia, what we do for every woman of inspiration that we have on the show, we always ask them to pick one word that best describes your personal brand. So what would be that one word for you?
Love.
Of course, I knew you would say love.
Love. That's our motto, everything love. So what else would it be? Come on.
And for our listeners, once you see Katia, you'll see she oozes love. It just oozes out of her.
Oh, you're so lovely.
And the other thing that we do as we wrap up the show, we always ask our beautiful woman of inspiration to leave our listeners with 3 shiny golden nuggets. So what would you like to leave for our listeners today?
Yes. Number 1 is know your why. So know your intention and always follow that. Don't be swayed. So have your intention and keep at it. Number 2, trust your gut and your instinct, because your gut knows. And if something feels wrong or a situation feels dodgy, then reevaluate or, get some advice or support or something, but always trust that. And number 3, which is like a 3 and 4, is be yourself, be true to who you are, and keep going. Just don't give up. You got this. You got this.
I love this. I love the fact you said you got this. And for our listeners, how can they find you, darling?
So you can jump on either to Facebook at The Love Destination, or check out our website at thelovedestination.com.
Thank you so much for being so honest and standing your truth. It's so true. A lot of the stuff that you speak about, I resonate with, and I'm sure our listeners will resonate with. And it is very powerful with you spending your time with us today and being vulnerable and telling the truth. So thank you so much for your time and energy.
Thank you so much for having me, and big kiss to you out there. Have a wonderful week. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you so much, darling. Appreciate it.
Bye. Bye, gorgeous.
Bye-bye. That brings us to the end of another episode. I hope you enjoyed the show, as it is my mission to reach out and inspire as many individuals like you. And one of the best ways to help us achieve this goal is by giving us a good review on iTunes. It's easy and it only takes about 10 seconds. If you have any questions or special guests that you would like to hear from, please send us an email to support@catherineplano.com.au and we will get right back to you. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter or Facebook @Catherine Plano. That's it for now. Thanks for listening. Until next week, please take care.